Hey everybody, Jason Sherman here. In today's episode of Zero to CEO, I speak to Gianna Ricciardi, co-founder of Practice Leader at Vita Assure. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
And we're going to be talking about how to adopt technologies to modernize benefits using new market solutions. It's kind of a mouthful, so I want to kind of dig into how all of that helps, business owners in particular. Let's talk about the adoption of technology and how that is helping businesses with these new solutions. What exactly can businesses use in terms of a new adoption of technology?
Well, I would say, there's definitely offerings that could be made available to employees. But one of the things that I'm really seeing as being very useful in respect to technology is on the communication side of it, and also on how you interact with your benefits plan. So, we all know it. Benefits is a very important cost for business, but it's definitely an investment because obviously it's for the overall well-being of employees. But what tends to happen is that often employees aren't aware of the coverages they have, or aren't aware of how to use them and access them. So technology has been really useful in communicating the benefits of the plan. But for example, most insurance companies now have apps where you can submit claims online, you can get additional information, you can interact with customer service more efficiently. And you can also access vendors. So when I mean vendors, healthcare practitioners. So, you could, for example, telemedicine, where you can speak to a doctor over video conference instead of having to physically go see a doctor. So that's one of the things that has been very useful.
What was it like before these new technologies came into existence? So I'm curious to hear, it was like a horse and buggy, now it's a car or a spaceship. So what was the horse and buggy? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So basically, you're hired by a company. The company says you're entitled to benefits. They hand you a physical booklet, which is probably like 100 pages of jargon.
It's a paperweight.
It's a paperweight. It's full of jargon, and you have paper claim forms. Okay, if you have an expense, fill out this paper claim form, mail it in. They're going to send you a check in the mail. So it was very procedural. I know that in smaller companies, sometimes what would happen is that the HR manager or the administrator would kind of want to help employees. So they would come to them with their invoices, and then they would help them fill out the form. And what I would always tell them is you shouldn't be doing that, not because I don't want you to be helpful, but because this information is confidential. If they claim
there's HIPAA violations, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you would want to encourage people, you could give them the information, encourage them to do it on their own. But yeah, back in the day, that's how it was.
So there's a lot of paperwork, and there were potentially lines being crossed from different departments. So you're saying that ever since the smartphone, for example, was invented, some companies have been adopting technologies to streamline access to benefits without getting the yellow pages of the book that you said, and being able to easily fill out benefits and or claims. Is that kind of what's been happening?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think insurance companies and healthcare practitioners themselves have adopted technology to make access to their products and solutions more comfortable, more user-friendly. And so employers are kind of jumping on that bandwagon and utilizing or helping their employees utilize those technologies. So for one, you want to make sure you're utilizing technologies that are available to you. But I think employers are also utilizing technology in other ways, which is to communicate the benefits, SharePoint sites or intranets, or they would have,
internal
form,
processes.
Webinars. Yeah, they're internal processes to communicate the benefits.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And so, there's been a lot of things happening over the past couple of years. As we know, we're living in historic times, and companies have changed the way they treat employees. People have left jobs many times over because they're sick and tired of being treated like a number. mental health has become like a big topic of the day because of the pandemic and how isolation, friendship recession, relationships being torn apart, and then of course people not really being happy at their jobs. So what's some of the data that you've seen kind of come out of all of this in terms of mental health, and companies trying to combat employee happiness?
Well, it's a big, like, honestly, it's a hot topic definitely right now. I think employers are trying to address it in many different ways. The angle that I really like the most, because I find that at the end of the day it'll make a really big difference, is better training your managers, your supervisors, your leaders. We see all these posts on LinkedIn, those memes that you don't leave a job, you leave a manager.
Right.
So the truth is that and mental health is one of those intangible things, so it's difficult sometimes for many of us to grasp on how we can be helpful, or how we can make a difference. So by training the front line to be more aware, not to be able to solve the day, because that's not their job, but their job is just to be more in tune to, hey, there might be something going on with that employee, how can I direct that person
to see the signs of the mental health deterioration in progress, right?
Exactly. Like, often what I call it, because I have someone that I work with that offers this type of training, and we call it first aid for mental health, right? So, sometimes employers offer first aid, like CPR lessons to their employees. Well, this is the same kind of thing, but it's focused on mental health. So how do you spot the signs? How's the best way to react? I think that's...
And there's also a lot of different types. I mean, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's burnout, there's, panic attacks. I mean, there's probably so many different things that people have to look for. How can a business owner, or, in general, how can they be prepared for the multitude of mental health types? Because there are different signs for different things, right? So how do they do that?
Exactly. And the thing is that, when we're talking mental health, there's often more than one trigger, right? So we have our family life, our work life, our social, like, we have so many spheres, basically. And oftentimes something could be going wrong at home that you don't know about it, or it could be a combination of things going on in different aspects of that person's life. So it makes it even more difficult for somebody at work to understand that person's situation, because we don't know what's going on at home.
So what's the protocol on approaching somebody to find out what is going on?
I'm not the one who gives those trainings. I facilitate access to them, so I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. But definitely, there is a recipe. I will say there is a recipe. So, those out there that I guess are piqued or interested, I would definitely encourage you to look for some of these facilitators that can animate kind of trainings with your staff. The ones that I've I guess brokered or been able to organize in companies, they all came out of it picking up some concrete tips, because it's about practical things that you could do, right? So it's always come out as being something very positive.
And you mentioned that there's a recipe, and obviously recipes are made when there's something to have a recipe for. So what kind of data has come out of the pandemic, especially, that you've seen? I mean, I've seen some pretty startling, numbers online. Is there something that you can speak to in terms of how big this is?
Well, listen, before the pandemic, mental health was already on our radar. So it was already a leading cause of disability. So just to tell you that, the pandemic just brought it to a whole new level. So
how so? Like what are we talking here? Like, are there some numbers you can give me?
Well, I don't have a statistic offhand, but definitely we've seen things like the rate of suicide has significantly increased. We've seen burnout, anxiety, depression, all of these have increased significantly. And I think in part it's because the lines between work and home have blurred.
Right.
And also, one of the things that doesn't help, and this is was happening before the pandemic, but technology has been, I mean, we talked about technology at the beginning of the show being something very useful and something
Right.
that we want, but at the same time, what happens is it makes the pace of work much faster,
Hmm.
and it kind of means that there's more expectations on us to deliver.
Right, right. Because you can get like 80% of your work done in 20% of the time nowadays. So they were like, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your time?
Right. And like now you're not traveling anymore. So that time you saved, are you
Yeah.
going to produce more output? Right. And so, and it's also, some people in the workforce didn't grow up with technology. So for them, it's a hurdle to kind of adopt these new technologies.
And
So,
that can be
um,
frustrating and stressful.
it really adds to the stress level. And one of the things that they say is in terms of mental health, um, one of the big challenges is adapting to change. And so technology is kind of forcing change onto us every single day of our lives, on top of the additional responsibilities, the regular responsibilities that we have, with family and home. So I would say that these are some of the pressures as well
Makes
that people
sense.
are facing.
Yeah, it's tough times for sure, and there's has to be a way to navigate all of it. So I guess there has to be a good way for, say, like an HR department in your company, or if you're a startup and you only have one person handling this, how can you better educate the employees on the value of the benefits? Like, how do they help? How can someone help navigate that? Like, what are the best ways?
Well, to be honest, we work a lot with small, medium-sized businesses. We work a lot with startups that are like in a growth phase. So
Hmm.
often there's little to no HR department.
Right.
Um, so it could be really hard, when that one person has to deal with so many different aspects of HR, because the benefits is just one piece of the pie. So part of the role of what we do is we kind of coach them on how to onboard a new employee when it comes to benefits, what types of materials to share with them. Um, and we coach them through it, because, well, I would say definitely the onboarding process is probably the most important. It happens to me all the time that,
What
like,
what what happens? I want to hear this.
no, but it happens all the time that, if, like, usually my role is not to work directly with employees, but it happens all the time that I'll get a call and it'll be like, the HR manager gave me your phone number. I'm like, okay.
Oh.
And then basically it turns out that they're like, oh, how do I access my drug card? Like, I'll just give a random employee. I'm like, but
Right.
you've been enrolled in the plan for 6 months. How do you not know
How do
how
you
to
not know?
access your
Oh,
drug card
Jesus.
by, like, you know what I mean? So,
That's bad. Yeah.
so, and it's not the HR manager's fault. Sometimes they don't think of, like, they assume, oh, they're going to get an email from the insurance company, or they'll be able to navigate through the insurance company's resources, or, or,
So,
or
so
it's
you're
just,
saying
that
like,
one.
so you're saying like the onboarding process in terms of like giving the employees every single piece of information that they would need up front, whether in like tutorials, videos, paperwork, an app, like you mentioned, like it's more like presenting everything up front. Is that
Yeah,
really
no, present. So say, okay, you're as of this date, you're eligible for benefits. This is what your benefit includes, and
right?
I know that nowadays in most of the insurance companies don't offer printed booklets, but they have digital versions. Now,
Hmm.
what I like to do, because as I mentioned before, those booklets tend to be full of jargon,
Right.
and no one understands them. So I like to make, like a one pager called Benefits at a Glance, which is really like a high level summary, but you see everything on one page. So the employee's like, oh, I got this, I got this, it kind of gives them a big picture, and at
Right.
least they know, if I want more detail, now I could refer to my booklet, right?
That makes
So,
sense.
so you have that. Then you'll have, like, okay, here's how you access how you register for the app or the online portal. And
Does
these are the
does
type of
the
things
app
you
let you
can.
search for certain things? Like is it like, hey, I'm stressed out, what do I do? Or I'm sick, how do I take care of this? Or, is there something like that or
I think it would depend on the insurance company and the vendor. They're all a little bit different, but
okay.
but what they all do in common is give you access to what you need to know to actually claim. So all your
Okay.
benefits cards and your things like that. Oftentimes there'd be summary of your coverages. You could submit claims online electronically. You
Got it.
can verify that your information's up to date. Um, Banking details, things like that. And then, yeah, I would say definitely a lot of the insurance companies will have access to either, like, um, a library of additional information, sometimes wellness resources also available.
Makes sense.
And listen, it's not necessarily up to the HR person to develop all of the material that's going to be used in the onboarding process, but they can definitely piggyback on some of the resources that the insurance company puts at their disposal, because they often have videos and capsules and
right. They have it all
like
all the presentation stuff. Great. This sounds really detailed, and I'm guessing it sounds like your company helps people through this. So tell everyone where they can find out more about what you do and your website and everything.
Yeah, so we're insurance brokers. We specialize in employee benefits. The company is Vita Assure. So you could find us at vitaassure.com or on our LinkedIn page. I always present ourselves as brokers because people tend to understand what that means. We basically, negotiate insurance contracts. But what I always say after I've presented myself is that we're actually, my license doesn't say broker, it says advisor. So
right.
Really, the purpose, what we do is give advice to employers on how to maximize the value of their benefits plans. So that's why I said a big part of what we do is to help them with the communication, the onboarding, and how to kind of make sure employees are getting the best out of their benefits plans.
Perfect. Awesome, Gianna. Thank you so much. Once again, check out vitaassure.com if you have questions about insurance for your company. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much.